Hi, everybody. I am back. Thank you so much for tuning in. And today, I am looking forward to really dive in deep on one particular topic that it's a really has transformed the way I look at things in my life and in especially my business. And I'm going to give you the really short quick, dirty version of it in terms of how are we really operating from possibility. And specifically today, I'm going to share with you the one thing that is going to fuel you space, like living in the space of possibility and operating from a space of possibility, and then what kills possibility. And then ultimately, the third piece I'm going to share is how you can operate and continue to expand and work from what is truly possible. Okay. So let's just really talk about what it all really means when it comes to possibility. And for us, especially for my situation, what we teach here at Fit to Profit is a possibility is anything that is different than anything that you can think of or have had already happened in the past, right? So you can definitely look up the definition of what possibility is, on Google and such, but that's basically it, right? In this context. Okay. So what I really want to get to, and especially with this podcast being the Fear Factor podcast, I want to really get into the first thing is how you can fuel possibility. Okay. So I want to really invite you to the idea of using fear, go figure, right? Using fear as a fuel for expanding yourself into possibility. And here's what I mean by that, right? Fear is really interesting, and it has so many different effect on different people, and especially, it has a very distinctive difference effect on overachievers and people who are into goal getters and things like that. For me, just like that, I can relate that fear actually is a signal and an indicator for me that, first of all, I'm on the right track. And rather than for most using fear or allowing fear to take control, and so that that person sits back and then just wait for permission or whatever it may be, sits back and then let fear take over, right? But for most overachievers and most goal getters and people who are motivated to make dreams happen, is that they use fear as fuel so that they can then step into it. Because the interesting thing is with fear, you heard me talk about this before. Well, first of all, fear is like excitement without breath. So if you feel afraid or scared, the sensations are very similar to if you were excited, right? Like you can probably have sweaty palms, like you have trembling voice, you are red and flushed, and all of that. And the difference is fear and excitement. Fear, you're holding your breath, right? Because you're afraid. So you're holding your breath. But excitement, you really dive into it. You embrace all the sensations. So, with that said, if you're willing to use fear as fuel, then you would do it anyway. Because you know that when, at least for me, I'm going to speak for myself here. If I step into conquering my fear and doing whatever it is, that fear goes away. So that's how, rather than using it to paralyze my dreams, I use it as an indicator that I should go forward and even faster. And that's also an indicator that I am growing. So that's how you can use fear as fuel for possibility, right? And I know I know it firsthand where perhaps you can't see it yet. You can't see what I'm talking about, right? In terms of, what do you mean what's possible? It's going to come really clear to you towards the end of our conversation. So just hang with me here, right? So we're just talking about really managing fear because that comes up, right? That comes up in all type of situations where we're forced to make a decision, or we're being driven to make a choice in whatever it is, fear always comes up. So I want to bring that up for the sake of our discussion. And then that's the first thing. So rather than allowing fear to take over, use fear as fuel for you working into your possibility. Okay. And then secondly, what kills possibility is self-judgment. And here's what I mean by that. Self-judgment is very self-explanatory as well. It's like the way you feel about yourself, how you judge yourself in every situation. You judge yourself also on the way, on feedback that you receive, for example. You judge yourself on other perception of you. You judge yourself on various things. I can tell you from my experience, what I learned is the minute I start judging myself, I am operating from limitations. And when I am operating from limitations, meaning what already happened, what I already know, or what I already been told, all of the things, I have no room and no space for what else could happen. And the what else could happen is possibility, is what I'm talking about here. So when you're in self judgment or when you're judging yourself, there is no room for growth. There is no room for expansion. So just know that you can kill possibility very fast. And I invite you to really seeing at you operating from what's possible right now. And if you're not, chances are you're super critical with yourself. And again, I'm saying this with a lot of love because just like me, you're probably doing it, right? And because I have done it to myself, like I still do. I'm not saying that I'm a now completely 100% transformed. So no, it's self-development and self-growth is also a journey. Like there's no destination to it. So there's always a level. But know that when it comes up and when you are being, bind to making decision or creating a choice from limitations because you are judging yourself. You're judging yourself and that all you know. So that's how you can kill possibility really fast. Okay. And then yeah, so now what feels like that what's an indicator that you are operating from possibility is you're afraid, right? You're afraid, you're taking risks. That's how you know that you're really going for what's the alternative, right? Like forget about using the word possibility because it may sound, so out there and it might sound so big and vast and even vague sometimes. So yeah, what's the alternative, right? So fear gets you to really see that you can take charge of knowing or figuring out the solution and what's the alternative to whatever the situation is. You are when fear exists in your life, that's when you know you're really expanding and you're really operating from what's possible. And then what I really want to get to, and again, is a quick and dirty episode today on how to really operate from possibility, is last but not least, operating from possibility and into possibility is a practice. It's not going to be an overnight thing. As you can see, you have to manage your self judgment in the process. You have to learn how to manage your fear in the process. So, as you can see, how that can be and needs to be a practice. Okay. So the practice is really honestly fairly very simple because a lot of you have asked me, well, I want to think about the alternative. I don't want to think about the negative. I want to think about what I'm capable of, or what else is out there for me and how do I even start, right? It's really simple, right? I want to say with even creating a list of hobbies, right? Of something that you haven't done that you want to do. That's the first practice that you can take on. I don't know. Like, have you, I mean, for example, take a ballroom dancing class. I don't know. Most recently, I found that there's a axe throwing class or event. I don't know. do I want to do that? Probably not, but it sounds pretty interesting, right? But so the idea for you is like start that. Start really small, right? Or even if, for example, you're always working out in the morning and you feel a certain way when you work out in the morning. What if you work out in the afternoon? So that's the alternative, right? That's what's possible. You can work out in the morning or you can work out in the afternoon. But if you want to play around and see, if you're most effective working out in the morning with your workouts or you're most effective in the afternoon. Yeah, see, it could be really small and it's a constant practice, right? So, as you can see, it could start with a list of hobbies and then you can go into changing up your routine and really thinking about the alternatives. And then ultimately, if you're like ultimately lost and you just don't know where to turn, the best way is to really start following people that you admire, right? I know I have been, I did, and I have been, and I still am following people that I admire, like my mentors and people who are like embodying, not doing, because the doing is what you are seeing from the outside and you really honestly don't know what's really happening, right? You can really watch for people who really embody whatever it is that you're trying to um, create in your life. So for me, being generous is very important to me. And for me, being generous does not mean it's monetary. Being generous does not mean that because I have a lot of money. I'm generous with my time. And honestly, time, as you already know from one of my last episodes, that is like the most valuable commodity, right? So start with that. Like really start emulating the people that you really admire and one day want to become. Okay, that's a quick and dirty for you guys today. I really am inspired on this topic, considering that we are into a growth and scaling mode for the business. And I find myself in the chaos, right? Oh my gosh, and the self-judgment and the fear and all of the things. So that's why I'm really inspired to share these tips with you, where it may sound very it may sound very easy, but it's not. So I encourage you to really take this on. Really see, are you afraid? It's a good sign that you're afraid, no matter what it is that you're doing, personally or professionally. And then also, you can be afraid, you may be growing, but you might also be self sabotaging yourself at the same time because you're judging yourself and you're killing possibility there. So that's just almost like the two things that you can really use to gauge as indicators for how you're growing and are you really operating from possibility. So yes, that's what I have for you. Yes, I'm inspired to get back into the game. I know it took me a little bit time to really wrap my head around this topic and what I really want to share, and I want to be intentional with it. So that's what I have for you. I will talk to you next week.